I'm going to show you how to complete question 1 on the study guide for the texting and driving test. So to access the study guide, go to your homepage for the Canvas Physics website and go down to day 8. That very first link, practice with writing claim evidence reasoning, you need to click on that, make a copy. Now, at any point, if I start going too quickly, please remember to just pause the video, flip back and forth so you can get this done. So we are talking about how do we make a claim, support it with evidence, and then use reasoning to tie our evidence back to our claim when talking about texting and driving. So we're using science to talk about something that's really important in our society, like should we be texting and driving at the same time? So we did a warm-up in class where we talked about is the cat going up or down and talked about what the pieces of claim evidence reasoning are. You can read through this, but today we're going to focus on doing question number 1. So we're going to be using a simulation to answer a question. Now, if you have a perfect simulation that we built in class, you can use it, but if you have the slightest doubt that it's not 100% perfect, just use this one here. There's a link to it. You could make a copy and then you'll know that you have one that's perfectly created. It's all, coded correctly. And just a little reminder is that you need to only enter numbers in the blue boxes here when you're working on your simulation. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the doc and I've some information and a question. So my question is texting and driving potentially hazardous versus alert driving? So everyone should really be able to answer that claim right off the bat. Of course, texting and driving is more hazardous than paying attention, but we're going to not just make the claim, we're going to actually prove it using evidence and reasoning, using science. So first thing we need to do is we need to plug in this information that's given in the problem. So we're going to be driving at a speed of 15 meters per second. Okay, so we're going to go over here to our spreadsheet. We're going to look for the speed of the car and we're going to enter 15 meters per second. Be sure you hit enter so that things calculate. You should have seen 15 pop up for the other speeds because it's been programmed to pull from that cell. Okay. A reaction time of 0.5 seconds. So these may not be in the order they're listed. Be sure you look for reaction time, which is cell B9. Okay, and you're going to enter 0.5 seconds. Hit enter. Okay, the acceleration is -8 meters per second per second. So I'm going to plug in -8. And then the last piece is that there's a possible distraction time of 3 seconds. So if you're distracted for 3 seconds, we've now set up this spreadsheet using the information from our labs, and we can determine that the total distance a car is going to travel is 67 meters. That's 216 feet if you think in feet. Okay, we need to compare that. This is the distance it's going to take the car to come to a stop when you're distracted to the distance that it takes the car to come to a stop when you're not distracted. So the only thing we're going to need to change is our time of distraction. You still have to react and you still have to bring the car to a stop through braking, even when you're actually paying attention and alert. So we're going to compare this scenario with 3 seconds of distraction to a scenario with no distraction time. This is a scenario for our alert driver. And look at that. They're going to be able to stop in 22 meters. I'm going to toggle here between 0 and 3 so it's really clear. If you're a distracted driver, you're going to travel this extra 45 meters and end up having to take 67 meters to stop, as opposed to an alert driver who's going to take 22 meters to come to a stop, which is clearly much safer. The final thing I'm going to do to make this really strong evidence is I'm going to determine a total distance to some obstacle. Maybe it's a mailbox or maybe it's someone crossing the street up ahead. We're going to show that if you are not distracted and you can stop in 22 meters, that you're not going to hit an obstacle. And when you're alert, stopping in 67 meters, you could hit that obstacle. So we're going to choose a distance anywhere in between 22 and 67. So let's choose 40. Be sure you hit enter. And what happens now is as I go from alert, where it shows you're in the clear, to distracted, now it shows you're going to hit that object because it's somewhere in between your two stopping distances. Okay, the next step is to take a screenshot. The way that you do that is you do Control, Shift, and then the window changer key that is just above the 6. And you can either just use your finger on your touchscreen on your Chromebook, or you can use your touchpad with the cursor and you highlight the important part of the simulation. Okay, we don't really care about all these menus and things. Don't worry about that. Okay, once it's taken a screenshot on your Chromebook, a little message will pop up in the corner that says copy to clipboard at the bottom of it, and you just need to click that. So click copy to clipboard. Okay, and then you're going to go back to the Google Doc, and this is where you are going to put your screenshot. This is the question that you're answering. These are some hints to make sure you're really clear about what these different pieces of the claim evidence reasoning paragraph look like. And then you're going to write the paragraph here. So we're coming up with our evidence before we write our paragraph so that we can refer to the screenshots in our paragraph. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control V, which pastes my screenshot in. And then I'm going to name it. Now, here's the thing. If you click up here, a lot of people have trouble because they start writing in the header. And all of a sudden, they've got this pasted into every single page into the header. So what I recommend is just if you click at the back of the claim evidence reasoning, just right at the end, and just kind of hit enter down a few times, then you're going to be able to get your cursor right above the screenshot. And we're going to call this screenshot number 1, alert driver, because this is the driver that's going has 0 seconds of distraction. Okay, I'm going to create a second screenshot. I'm going to go ahead and get ready for it by typing in screenshot number 2, distracted driver. Okay, and then I'm going to paste my second screenshot there. So I'm going to go back to my simulation. I'm going to turn this to a distracted driver. I'm going to take another screenshot just of the important information. Okay, if I was on a Chromebook, then I'd hit copy to clipboard. Don't forget that step, even though it doesn't show up on my laptop. And then I'm going to paste the screenshot in. Okay, and these are really big. It's okay if you want to make them just a little smaller. You can leave them this big if you can work with it, but I'm going to make them a little smaller. Be sure you don't make them so small that I can't read the numbers, but it's just going to make it a little easier to be able to refer to them if we can see them on the same screen. Okay, so now I have 2 solid pieces of evidence, and it's time to write my claim evidence reasoning paragraph. Okay, now that we've got 2 screenshots, it's time to write our paragraph. Okay, we have some information here about what a claim, evidence, and reasoning is, and we're going to write the paragraph down here, and it does need to be color-coded. So your claim should be in red. Now we've written the word claim in red to get you started. So just go ahead and click on it, delete the word claim, and then you can start writing your claim, and it will show up in red. So we need to write a sentence stating if texting and driving is potentially hazardous. Now, based on just some common sense supported by some scientific evidence that we've come up with, texting and driving is definitely more dangerous than alert driving. So when I write a strong claim, I want to state that in a single sentence, but I also want to give it a little bit of context. So this is kind of what I've been doing. This is how I've come to this conclusion. And so I'm going to start by giving it a little bit of context. And as you can see, when I start typing, it shows up as red. Okay, and in the interest of your time, I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste a claim that I have waiting over here. You'll, of course, have to write this. Oh, but now I've got 2 afters. After investigating and programming a simulation for texting and driving, I conclude that distracted driving is much more hazardous than alert driving. Okay, some things you should notice is I gave it a little bit of context here, and then I stated a strong conclusion. It's a single sentence, and there you go. So now it's time for our evidence. Again, either just delete the word evidence or highlight and delete, and you'll be able to start typing, my evidence is, well, that didn't work. My evidence is, there we go. And this is where you're going to use these screenshots. You're going to refer to them because these are your evidence. And the important piece of evidence here is the total distance a car moves, because that's what we really care about, is how long is it going to take to come to a stop? Are we going to hit the obstacle or not? It's completely based on this. Okay, we came to this number by putting in some inputs, doing some calculations, adding those three distances together. This is the important one. So if you refer to nothing else, be sure that you refer to the total distance the car moves when alert and the total distance the car moves while distracted, because a comparison between these two totals is really the important piece of evidence here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in our example evidence so you don't have to watch me type this out. Whoopsies. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at this. And this is a very thorough, listing of evidence. My evidence is the comparison of distances involved for an alert driver versus a distracted driver. Evidence piece 1 is a screenshot of my simulation for an alert driver driving 15 meters per second and having a reaction time of half a second and an acceleration of -8 meters per second. Here's the important part. It shows an alert driver will travel 22 meters. Evidence piece 2 is a screenshot of my simulation for a distracted driver. Again, driving 15 meters per second. Again, a reaction time of 0.5 seconds, acceleration of -8 meters per second. But here's the difference, and a distracted time of 3 seconds. Important part here is that it shows the distracted driver will travel 67 meters. So as you can see, what we're looking for with evidence is you're giving us the results of the science that you did. When you inputted these numbers into your simulation that was created based on the physics labs that you created, you are going to be able to provide some solid numerical evidence. Now, the last part is the reasoning. The reasoning is a statement that takes that evidence and ties it back to the claim. Why is it that those numbers then support the claim that you stated in red? Okay, so let's look at our example reasoning. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. Be sure that it's in purple. Okay, now there's a lot of ways to start reasoning. A good way to start sometimes is just therefore. Here's another option. Considering these two pieces of evidence together, it can be seen that even at this low speed, a distracted driver will travel 45 more meters. That is over twice as far as an alert driver and could be the difference of an awful accident and a close call where everyone is safe. So where did that 45 come from? This is the difference between your two totals, 67 meters and 22 meters. So if you were to subtract 67 minus 22, you'll get 45. Okay, you'll also see that as this value right here of the distance when you change this from 0 to 3. So this is a really good way to show some reasoning, is that, hey, well, here's our evidence, but let's now directly compare those two pieces of evidence to be able to then, understand why we made the claim that we did. I'd like to see some reasoning here. I'd like to see you tie this together to the real world, talking about how it could be the difference between an accident and a close call. But basically, it should just demonstrate how your evidence then ties back into your claim. So overall, your problem number 1 should have this claim evidence reasoning paragraph, followed by 2 screenshots, one alert, one distracted, both of which should be labeled completely. And once you have completed question 1, you are now ready to try a different modification of the scenario for question 2. So go ahead and try that one now on your own.